Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Elishar-Malka, and today I'll be presenting to you a presentation based on a study that I've been doing for the last 2 years with my colleagues, Dr. Dana Wyman-Zaks and Dr. Yaron Ariel, and we're all from the communication department at the Israel Valley College in Israel. The study is a rather broad one. We've been looking into a growing phenomenon, especially in Israel, of closed Facebook groups that are dedicated to women, operated by women. I'll be talking about it in a few minutes. So, as part of this study, one of the aspects that caught our attention was the potential of these closed groups to serve deliberative goals or to promote deliberation. So a little bit of a background to the whole idea of closed Facebook groups as a realm or as a sphere of deliberation. So, in recent decades, a new field of research has developed in the Western world called deliberative communication. This field of research has its origins in the theories of Habermas and Barber, among others, and it focuses on the potential contribution of political deliberations to the strengthening of the foundation of democracy and the promotion of social-political goals. Keen supporters of the concept of deliberative democracy tend to share the assumption that the very act of participating in projects of a deliberative nature has democratic educational value. It expands the individual's political knowledge base, cultivates a sense of civil and self-empowerment, and strengthens motivation for broader political participation in the future. Even in the absence of a predefined social-political objective or agreed strategy for promoting it, and even if there are no predetermined issues up for deliberation, the contribution of deliberative activity to the promotion of various democratic values remain consistent, especially when the participants manage to keep an open mind. Scholars have found that under certain circumstances, even an informal political conversation may essentially be deliberative in nature. As people discuss actual issues, share ideas, and try to change their minds in a friendly, open-minded environment, they become active, aware citizens. Now, the flourishing of social networking sites has encouraged scholars to examine their potential contribution to deliberative processes, as they enable an abundance of opportunities to deliberate. And one can think about forums and about certain Facebook groups, among others, platforms that the social media landscape has brought into our lives, and they're all relevant to the action of deliberative communication, of people coming together to discuss issues, to share ideas, try to convince each other, try to come, sometimes not always, into a common conclusion, and etc., etc. In this context of deliberative communication, one of the most relevant online platforms is, as mentioned, the closed Facebook groups phenomenon. A close examination of the Israeli case study of closed Facebook groups reveals the dominancy of groups that are run by women and which appeal specifically to women. Some groups have tens of thousands of members. A few have even 100 to 150,000 or more. The type of activities carried out within their framework is extremely broad. Some groups are dedicated to motherhood, others are dedicated to sexuality, and others are more general in nature, like the one that I'll be presenting to you in a few minutes. The current study has examined the inner dynamic of closed Israeli women's groups on Facebook to identify deliberative processes among them. Our research question has been, to what extent are women's closed Facebook groups in Israel characterized by elements and action of deliberative communication? And it's important to mention here that we're not referring to political groups, we're not referring to groups that are predefined as platforms for deliberative communication. No, they're general groups relevant for women's lives, or at least what the managers seem to believe that women are interested in. And as part of the action, as part of the dynamic of these groups, many participants find themselves, even if not planned to do so, taking part of deliberative communication processes. A quantitative content analysis was conducted to examine over 1,000 random posts, and also the analysis of the profile of the original post contributors, including some indicators that measure the post's entire threads. So we were looking both on quite a large portion of random posts, but we also, since we had the ability to see the names of the contributors, we would go back to Facebook outside the group and see how open their profile were, okay, to learn a little bit about them as members of the Facebook world. All posts were reached between December 2017 and January 2018. All posts derived from a large and well-known closed Israeli women's group on Facebook called Supergirls, with over 100,000 members. As I said before, unlike other women's groups, this group is general in nature. It encourages women participants to talk about everything that bothers them, that interests them, to ask for advice, to share their feelings and personal stories, to discuss current issues, and so on and so forth. Some words about the results we had. An overwhelming majority of posts, almost 90% of them, included dialogical elements. And by dialogical elements, we mean reactions. So people were uploading posts and sharing some materials as well as their own original writing. And in most cases, they were receiving reactions and response. And in many cases, they were not receiving only single ones, but sometimes hundreds of response, thousands of response. And we could see how certain members of the group, certain participants, weren't just responding to the original post, but we could see the reactions becoming a part of a discussion, of a multi-participants discussion, or in many cases a deliberative action of communication. One more thing that we found very interesting was the fact that in most posts, 94% of them, when we looked at the authors, the contributors, we could find their names, their profile pictures, and Facebook's full profile. They were all open to people. So participants were not hiding. They were not anonymous. They were standing behind the things they had to see, to share and tell everyone. And it's important to keep in mind that we're talking about groups that are enormous in their capacity, groups in which most members are unfamiliar with one another, And still they were ready to get out of the anonymity, and share their lives and ideas and feelings and personal stories. So this is the environment, and we believe that it is crucial for the creation of a good atmosphere, deliberative surrounding or environment. What we also found, and this might be the most important data here or result, we found a positive correlation between the level of personal exposure and the depth of discourse that followed the user's initial post. And by saying this, we mean that the more participants or contributors were opened in their posts, that is, we're sharing more feelings or thoughts, giving more information about their inner world, okay, not just, practical information, but telling a story about their inner world, cognitive or mental world. The response they were getting were more deep, they were deeper, they were we could measure the level of responsiveness and see that people were dedicating more to posts in which the authors were open. People were not just, using the like button, but they would share the messages. They would react. They would answer questions if there were any questions. They would encourage, they would agree or disagree. They would become active members of a discussion as a reaction, as a response to a single post. So there is a very straight line here between how open I am and ready to shed light on my inner world, and the scale of responsiveness that I would get from other participants who, once again, in most cases, do not know me in person. Although most popular topics of the post were recommendations and practical tips, as you can see, it's about 20%. Gender-related issues were 18%, and health-related posts were 8%. Many posts were dedicated to political issues, politics, current issues. This was indeed one of the topics that participants were talking about. Once again, this is not a political or a current affairs related group. It's a general group, and women could discuss everything they would want to. But politics was really a significant part of the issues that were raised there. In these posts, group members were freely discussing actual political issues in a non-judgmental environment, opening themselves to other ideas and points of view. This study highlights the vital role that closed women's groups on Facebook may play in their members' lives, not only in social and psychological aspects, but also in the sense of practicing deliberative interactions. In this sense, we can argue that activity in these groups strengthens the vital sense of being empowered citizens. Thank you very much for listening and for having us here.